Hello all. Thank you for joining myself, Ridwan, and Zaina in discussing choice and voice for learners. In this section, we gave students the opportunity to voice their opinions on the decisions that directly affect them and their education. We then collected all the information taken by our note takers and compiled it into this presentation. To briefly introduce myself, my name is Zoe Mosky. I am a grade 12 student at Collège Bellevaux, and I'm so proud to be part of this experience in my final year of high school. Although I will not be directly affected by these changes, I was thrilled to be a part of this group and to help spark change. Our first topic of discussion is social adaptations and determinants. Although COVID-19 brought with it change and uncertainty, most students were able to slow down and concentrate on themselves and their well-being. Many were able to get more sleep, and since the schoolwork was lighter, students were able to explore new hobbies. Students agree that although the lighter course load was refreshing, they want to be part of the conversation. Given the fact that many students have been paying more attention to the news, students are wanting to be part of those discussions. They are wanting more opportunity to speak up and are simply wanting to be informed, which is why this youth summit was such a huge success. As a student myself, I can also confirm that we are definitely missing those social connections that occur in a normal school environment, such as conversing with peers before and after class. With little to no in-depth conversations, students are really missing that time to socialize, as well as human connection. Even activities like Kahoots and in-class games are missed. We believe that this made students want more collaborative project-based learning as well. Students also noticed the absence of and long for school spirit, previously seen in activities like gym riots and grade wars. They are also missing field trips as well as extracurricular activities such as sports, in and outside of school, theater classes, and volunteering. Many students mentioned that due to the pandemic, school seems to feel like an option. This is most likely due to all the lockdowns. Some say that their screen time is through the roof on an academic and personal level. This would explain why most students are looking forward to reducing the number of Teams meetings and calls in a post-pandemic world. We found that some students do not exactly enjoy the half-day system, whereas others do in fact prefer half-days. Many students also mentioned how they do not love the cohort system. Although another thought that was brought up a few times was that some students find it difficult to focus in the online setting, concentration-wise. Common challenges include Wi-Fi connectivity, siblings, and many more. Having more mental health resources to be able to talk about how students are feeling and what bothers them was also brought up. Students also found that their routine got quite repetitive and boring. There was lack of motivation and lots of procrastination. COVID restrictions definitely played a role in this. Student epiphanies. With the world on pause, students had lots of time on their hands. With this, they were able to learn a lot about themselves, their values, likes, dislikes. They were able to explore new interests and hobbies. They acknowledged the importance of gratitude, especially when it came to visiting friends and family. Students had much more awareness of the world around them, and finally, they had the time to enjoy the things that they love to do. They focused on the things that really made them happy. I think we all know just how busy life can become. This pandemic has shown us all what truly matters and that there is so much to be grateful for. Slowing down might not be the worst thing in such a busy world. Thank you all so much for taking the time to hear what all the students had to say. Now I would like to present Ridwan, who will be leading the next portion of Choice and Voice for Learners. Thank you.
Thanks, Zoe. A big thank you to all the teachers, staff, and personnel in attendance on this beautiful day of learning and discussion. My name is Ridwan Libanmus, and I attend Windsor Park Collegiate. The topic I'll be talking about today is leadership and independence for choice and voice for learners. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment of silence for the unthinkable loss of 215 Indigenous children whose lives were taken at the former Kamloops Residential School, and all Indigenous children who never made it home, the survivors and their families. Thank you. I will now begin. One lesson, an important lesson that was learned during this pandemic and during lockdown, as Zoe mentioned, was that a lot more people learned more about themselves, who they were, what they like, their values, and so on. They were able to explore new interests and hobbies. In a world where people are being pressured into liking things, doing things, turning into people they're not, it is important that we preserve this individuality and creativity because it creates independence. And one of the ways we can do this is by giving students more opportunities to lead. What I mean by giving them more opportunities to lead is by hosting more events such as the Youth Summit and having more student-led school committees so that the students can voice their opinions about their schools, what they believe they need, and how they believe the future should look. Students want to share, they want to talk, they want to be leaders and change the world today. All they need is that extra push, that door that opens it all for them. So many people who attended the Youth Summit were happy that they did because they felt like they had their voices heard. They felt like the conversations that needed to be talked about were being talked about. And while teachers and staff helped greatly to make this happen, it was mostly a student-led conversation where students talked to other students about what we wanted to see happen. A friend of mine was debating before the Youth Summit whether or not they should go because they felt like they were going to have to speak up and talk, and while they're a little bit shy. I told them you should get out of your comfort zone and give it a shot. It's going to feel like a discussion, and if you don't talk, others will. And you can just listen in so you can realize that you aren't alone, that there's so many different students who've gone through the same things you've gone through during the pandemic. And they attended, texted me an hour after the discussion was finished and said, "Wow, that was a really cool experience. I chose to speak up and no one laughed or anything. People actually agreed. If there's anything else like this that goes on in the future, can you invite me?" I was obviously happy, and it made me think though, why was this the only leadership opportunity I've ever invited them for? They're obviously interested, and then I realized it's because this has been the first time I've been given a chance. Even for me, I never really saw myself in this position one day. I never really identified myself as a leader. I mean, sure, I like getting to choose who'd be on my team in dodgeball when I was in grade 6, and I love talking about pretty much anything that seemed interesting. Any one of my teachers here today can testify to that. But yeah, I think students really need to redefine what and who a leader is. It just means being you, staying true to yourself, and loving you for who you are. We need students to understand this so that they can break out of their shells and start taking on these roles that we need them to take to ensure we'll have a tomorrow that they can be proud of. Another thing that students have been experiencing is the feeling of growing up too fast, which I believe everyone on the call today can relate, and becoming more invested in their futures. With so many hashtags trending around the world, such as George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, what's happening in Myanmar, and Free Palestine, students want to be more informed, and they felt like they needed more awareness about the news as to what's happening around the world and in our own country too. They want clarity so that they have the chance to form their own solid opinions on topics that society considers controversial, and through forming their own opinions, they will also be gaining their own independence. Thank you all for giving us students the opportunity to inform you on how we envision the future and what we believe will be crucial to our success. I will now pass it on to Zaina to finish this off.
Thank you, Ridwan. Good afternoon to you lovely folks. For those who haven't taught me before, my name is Zaina Abazid, and I'm a grade 10 student at J.H. Bruns Collegiate. As Ridwan and Zoe have already covered, we as young teens have learned lots from this pandemic, and the experiences we've faced have led us to develop a sense of independence, whether it was in our personal or academic life. And see, the thing is, the need for balancing the two was always there. But as you know, it was harder than usual this time. After having the chance to reflect, we began to acknowledge some of the questions we had about our future and education. So while we covered the pros and cons about going virtual in the summit, it was almost unanimous that students valued that typical in-class environment. With online, they mentioned that their questions were often left unanswered. With this being said, I'm here to discuss what worked for our students in LRSD. So we came to agree that it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that students were exposed to the tech world and got to discover the ins and outs of these different online platforms. And as a matter of fact, it was a common answer by students to say that we should actually continue to polish up those computer skills as they believe computers are the future. And it was spread that Teams was a really good platform for students as they liked that idea of not having to email their teachers for a simple question, and they could just text them casually and get their question answered, which in another way leads to higher student engagement and activity. I think we can all agree that it could be a good idea to make it a goal to have everyone in our division at the same knowledgeable level of tech. Now, speaking about tech, there were multiple ways our teachers presented the information we needed for our classes, whether it was PowerPoints on Teams calls, teacher-made YouTube videos, links to online games, or what teachers like to call educational activities. There was simple at-home projects, breakout rooms, and independent readings. The point being, the effort you put into our learning hasn't gone unnoticed, and there has been an overwhelming amount of variety to cover for all types of learners during these times. We thought we could let you in on the student's perspective of some of these teaching methods so you have an idea of what's favored most, and in result, know how you can support your classroom even better than you already are. Now, coming in at number 1, YouTube videos. YouTube videos were the most helpful as they let us take in the information at our own pace and allowed us to go back, pause, rewatch, and if we didn't understand anything right away. So it would be nice to keep doing that later on in a post-pandemic world. This works similarly to recording meetings as well. Although something to keep in mind is that it's less likely that a student will watch a meeting and then watch also the recording just to catch 1 or 2 things they didn't understand. We also covered the 3 learning styles and learned that most of us were visual and kinesthetic learners. Not to completely exclude auditory learning, it was just that students didn't engage as much when it came to tuning into a teacher talking about a subject. And a few of them even said it felt like a podcast. Instead, they enjoyed being able to do hands-on projects and felt even more motivated to complete them when they got the chance to do them with their friends, virtually, of course. And so to add on to that idea of students gaining more freedom and flexibility over their education throughout the pandemic, students liked the fact that they got more choice on how they wanted to learn, whether it was visually, kinesthetically, or auditorily. And an idea I'd like to share with teachers is something my current ELA teacher has actually been doing. When giving specific assignments, they'll give the class multiple different options. For example, we had finished a novel study and we had a final project. And basically, some of the options were an art option by drawing how you pictured the characters and explaining why you were drawing it, or an essay option for students stronger in writing, or an article collage option. See, by doing this, our teacher had allowed us to flourish in our particular strengths, because let's face it, everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. And so having that choice really made us feel in control of our learning. And by giving us those options, there becomes more of a motivation for us to do our very best in it, and ultimately supports the idea of our main topic, choice and voice. Next, a topic that was brought up multiple times that we thought was important to discuss was exams and curriculum concerns. Students recognized that teachers cut out parts of the curriculum to allow for a low stress year, being that we were dealing with such a rare event. And this was, of course, appreciated, I'll tell you that. But it did raise questions on how this may make the transition from middle school to high school or high school to university more difficult. And so I never thought we'd be saying this, but we may actually be suggesting that we should have exams. Speaking from personal experience, I find it worrying that I am going into junior year never having participated in one genuine exam. And we found out that I wasn't the only one who was thinking like this. Our students implemented that perhaps only certain subjects should have exams, like math and science, for example, and language and humanity courses could be project-based. To sum it up, we're hoping we can keep exams instead of completely scratching it off, and instead implement more ways to help students through them and showing them how to properly prepare. And finally, we just wanted to say that this past year has taken a toll on us all. And just by holding these events, we are coming back stronger than ever. We're hoping that the information we provided today has given you some insight to a student's perspective through these uncertain times. We'd like to end off the keynote section of the day with thanking you for all your efforts and support throughout it all. No, really. We know that the summit was based on the idea of sharing our challenges during the pandemic, but we want to let you know that we can't imagine the challenges you've encountered as well. And we want to take the time to acknowledge your hard work and patience. You amaze and inspire us every day to keep going, and you're the reason we've made it through it all. The best part is that we went through this roller coaster together, and just like that, we can use our new experiences and knowledge to improve and finally shape our division to the ideal standard we know it can hold up to be. Thank you.